Hello YouTube, back with another couple of cameras I just recently bought on eBay. These are a pair of Ricoh 35, this one's a 35S, and this one's a regular Ricoh 35. These are early 35mm cameras. I'm only making this video because there's not a lot of information about these on the internet. Not that's very useful anyhow. I guess I'll start with this one. I got this one. This is one I actually wanted. I got both of these for 10 bucks plus shipping. And this is the one I was actually interested in. It turns out this one didn't work. It's got a shutter problem. But for basic information, these are leaf shuttered rangefinder cameras that are very, very cool. And they're interesting in the way they load up. Film goes in here, stretches across like all other 35mm, and rolls on this drum. And this here is your release. Disengage the sprockets so you can rewind your film when you're done. Case goes back on like that, and you twist these around to the black numbers. As I said, this is a rangefinder, and I discovered after a great deal of messing around that if you want to inspect the lens or the shutter on these, if you take these 4 screws out of the face, goes on something like that. Take those 4 screws out, the whole lens shutter assembly comes right out like that, and the only thing that remains holding the lens to the body is these 2 wire leads here, which are for the PC plug, which is right on the side of the lens. I went to a lot of trouble to get this thing apart. I took the top off it, I disassembled this, got it all wiggled out of there. In reality, you could probably just snip these off, because modern electronic flashes are going to be way too fast for this shutter. This, I believe, was built for flash bulbs, which are, in flash terms, very slow. So it's unlikely you'd be able to get a flash to work, an electronic flash to work very well with one of these. So if you did have some trouble, you wanted to inspect or take apart your shutter, if I had this to do over again, I would just cut these 2 wires off and let them be. And then, I haven't done it yet, but I've got to get inside of this to get to the leaf shutter, which doesn't react at all. The rest of the camera seems to work fine, although obviously I haven't run any film through it. But it's just a very cool camera. It has bulb, and from 1/10 of a second all the way to a 300th of a second for shutter speeds. Goes from f2.8 to f22, and is gauged from 3 feet to infinity. And both of these cameras have a neat feature, which is the depth of field scale, which I hadn't seen before on one of these cameras. And it's kind of neat if you want to know what is going to be in focus at a given f-stop. So you could line up your distance, you could focus, I mean, and then whatever is within your F range, if you've got this thing set for, we'll say that's F8, and tells you F8 here and here, that anything between 5 and 10 feet is going to be in focus. And I think that's a very nifty thing for a camera of this age. If you have one of these and you want to take the top off, you've got 2 screws. The winder top is screwed down, has a set screw going into it. Undo that set screw, and that knob, I don't happen to know where it is right now, will turn off its stud. You've got to undo these two screws here in the back on the hot shoe. You've got to take your eyepiece out, and that just unscrews. And then your film winder also unscrews. It's two pieces, one inside, one outside. You screw them apart, right-handed thread. And if I remember correctly, that top just came right off. The only thing I had trouble with is right under here, right where the serial number is, there's a like an eccentric gear that has a tiny little spring on it. You want to make sure that if you have to take the top off of this thing, you don't lose that little spring. As I said, it's got like an eccentric cam. The spring hooks into one hole on the cam, wraps around this cam thing, and then hooks onto it, not itself, but another portion of that cam to hold itself tight and keep that cam from slipping off. And that was the only real thing that kind of got me when I undid this thing, was that spring came undone. Otherwise, it's, as far as I can tell, a working body. I've just got to dive into this and find out why the shutter isn't working. I haven't done that yet, and I would show you how to take this thing apart, but I've already done it 2 or 3 times before I got it right, and I'm just not going to take it apart again unless I really have to. This is going to be a little different. It's going to be a little more surgical. There's a lot of tiny screws and a lot of stuff that has to come apart in order for me to get to the leaf shutter. This is the Ricoh 35 with no suffix. It's essentially the same thing. Has its little drop down film advance, which I think is kind of neat, and your shutter release, and as you can see, everything does what it's supposed to do. And your film rewind, your film release, so you can unwind the film back into its spool. That disengages the sprocket on that, and it's got this very cool, funky, I don't even know what to call it, very steampunky looking lens fixture here. And it's, again, it has settings from bulb to a 200th of a second. It also has the scale here for your depth of field, which I like quite a lot. Again, it's a rangefinder. And here is this ring is your actual f-stop. This one's a little fairly slow lens, very slow lens. From, well, I've got the wrong glasses on. Looks like 3.5 to f16, and also again with a PC plug, and has the same kind of access to the film. Same thing, film goes here across these sprockets onto this drum. Again, a leaf shutter, so there is no shutter curtain. It can also be worked manually. I would call this manually. You can crank the knob by hand, and this one appears to be in good working order. Again, I have not used this yet, but I'm looking forward to it. My only observation is so far is that there is some fungal growth on the lens elements.